I
I
sometimes
love
call it
lactation.
lactology, but that's not really the term anybody else uses. But I feel like lactology sounds like cardiology, and
Yeah,
that's
it
really
sounds
what I
really cool. It sounds really cool.
do. It
We
sounds
are,
more medical, and it's
yes,
true.
it
It's what I
does.
do. So,
All right, we are live.
all right.
I am. I'm sorry. I was having way too much fun with Dr. Lindsay behind the scenes, but it's really. I'm very excited to be here. This is Dr. Ola Benton. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Living Spring of Family Medical Center here in the amazing city of Mansfield, Texas, where we help our patients live long and well because we believe the quality of life is just as important as the quantity of life. If you
Love
join me live, hashtag live, you watch your replay, hashtag replay. You can tell I'm really stoked. We have an amazing guest today. We're going to be talking about Doc. I just had a baby and I'm struggling. Help me. Doc, how are you? And thank you for coming on. How are you doing today?
I am so glad to be here today. I love any chance to talk about this because postpartum in general is just such an under discussed topic. We're seeing it more finally, but it's like it's almost like the last bastion in women's health being so far behind men's, where we talked about pregnancy. You see a lot about birth, we see stuff
Mm-hmm.
about newborns, even menopause and hormones. Those are starting to become bigger in the last years, but postpartum is just now finally receiving attention. Just like normally when you have the baby, what happens? Everybody stops paying attention to you. And actually, an article written by a colleague of mine, so powerful recently that it's like everybody just walks right past you. They don't even see you anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You're gone, but you're suffering and you're alone and you're overwhelmed. And it's just all about the baby who is fine. They're just laying there. They don't need a whole lot, but you do. That's what I love to talk about.
All right. So Doc, right on. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Who are you and what do you do?
Sure. I am Dr. Lindsay Moore. I am an internal medicine and pediatrics physician, and I do primary care, but a huge part of my practice is specializing in the care of breastfeeding, lactation, and postpartum patients. So I like to say that I help new and expecting parents go from feeling overwhelmed to thriving during breastfeeding, postpartum, and beyond. Because as we said a few minutes earlier when we were off the air, you're postpartum forever. It never goes back to where you were.
Mm,
You don't bounce back to anything. You move forward.
that is correct. Now, why do you do what you do? What got you so interested in this niche?
Such a good question. I find that, like a lot of professionals in this area, my own personal experience. I was a pediatrician and an internist doing primary care for several years prior to having my first child. And I just wasn't trained well back then. I mean, it's well over a decade ago. I wasn't trained well on how to handle those kind of problems and what to even ask or look for, much less do anything about if I heard about them. And I had my first, and I remember thinking, well, I mean, how hard can breastfeeding and stuff be? We learned a little bit about every hard thing in the body. Maybe not enough, but something. And they never told me all this hard stuff. So it must be easy. And then I had what many of us like to call a lactastrophe of epic proportions. And I got slapped with like what I should know. And I didn't realize till later, but in the midst of that, I really did have postpartum depression and anxiety, which was also undiagnosed. And I didn't get the help I needed despite having a lot of support. It wasn't recognized. And I basically tell my patients now, I've spent the last decade becoming the doctor that I truly needed, but couldn't find because sometimes postpartum and lactation needs a physician level of training who can
Mm,
go
mm,
into a complicated situation and really sort it out. I think of it like when I used to, we would train in the ICUs. I'm not an ICU doctor. I don't ever want to go in one again, preferably, but I know how to think about it when 6 different organs are failing and the guy next
mm,
door is crashing and someone down the hall is like 10 minutes from crashing. You have that thought process of going in and really quickly sorting out these complex issues and knowing how to focus on what's next and really craft a plan. That is the thought process that you can only do when you're
mm.
trained that way for so long. And so sometimes you need that guidance to sort of captain the ship with you as you move forward. And that is why I do what I do now.
I love what you do. I like that, it addressed the pain point you went through so you can relate to some of the struggles that your
Absolutely.
clients go through. I like that you're championing this cause because it's a very underserved department or area when it comes to wellness as pertains to women. Now, my next question is this: what are some of the most common changes that happens to the mom postpartum, so that we
Sure.
can kind of try to normalize the process? What are most of the common things you tend to see postpartum?
Absolutely. I mean, first I would say what isn't, right? Like everything changes. We think of it as having a baby and that's just it. But it's a full body, full mental transformation. We actually have a term for that. It's called matrescence, and that's because it is becoming a mother. It is a process. It is a huge shift. You start out, of course, you're bleeding vaginally, whether it was a C-section or a vaginal delivery. That goes on for more than people realize. You have a placenta size, dinner plate size wound in your uterus. It's not visible, but it's there.
Hmm.
That's a lot of healing. Um, if you had a C-section, you have another huge wound to deal
Right.
with.
Right.
And unlike most abdominal surgeries, you're basically like, get out of bed immediately and start caring for another person. Forget about you. And you're like, what? Like that's crazy. You don't do
Mhm.
that to someone
Mhm.
operatively. We're gentle with them, although you do walk around. So you're dealing with a lot of times discomfort, pain, bleeding, and it can be very manageable, but it can also be very scary. A lot of people are dealing with at the same time some trauma from what the delivery was like. Sometimes I find that understandably, doctors, sometimes we misinterpret that as meaning we had something terrible done to us in delivery. And no, I took care of you well. It doesn't have to be a bad delivery. It doesn't have to be a scary delivery.
Mhm.
This is the most vulnerable thing you've ever done in front of a huge audience, oftentimes. And you have for the first time in many people's lives, the most out of control time that you realize
Mhm.
you can't
Vulnerable.
really control things, and that is
Mhm.
we may know it, but it's hard to look it in the face. All of that mental stuff is going on. Then you've got extreme exhaustion. I mean, call in residency was every third or fourth night, at my stage of training, and I remember 30 hours awake is a lot, even when there
Right.
were the beginnings of restrictions in place. And now you're basically on every night. And you may not be getting more than a couple of hours of sleep. And man, oh man, it is a lot. It's constant exhaustion along with responsibility, this weighing responsibility. So you sometimes get these intrusive thoughts. What if something goes wrong with my baby? And you just like, why am I going there? Um, that's just the beginning of it, right? That isn't even am I anemic? Did that get
Mhm.
followed up on like
Mhm.
should have been?
Mhm.
Am I getting nutrition? Now I'm also, if I'm lactating, I'm producing milk for another person. And man, those first 2 weeks can be brutal. I like to talk about breastfeeding problems as most of the time being predictable, preventable, and easily fixable. But that's only if you get the right education and support quickly. Like every problem the first 5 days after postpartum with breastfeeding, I consider to be a bit of an emergency because you don't have time. Hours matter. Um,
Mhm.
you don't keep going with bleeding, painful nipples and no milk unless you get the right help, or
Right.
you're already like anxious and depressed postpartum, and then maybe you don't see the light like I didn't. But there's just all of these things, and that's not even to start talking about the mental shifts and the shifts with if you have a partner or other relationships in your life. Those are completely transformed as well. And the first year after having a baby is actually considered and recognized to be one of the most stressful years in a family's life, but we don't really give it the credit it's due. And if you're lucky, quote unquote, in America, in 10 or 12 weeks, you go back to work. And then now you're thrown still sleep deprived.
Mhm.
You're not back. Your baby's still not. I mean, how's the baby sleeping? Even if they're sleeping well,
Right.
you're still
Right.
exhausted. And a lot of patients I used to take care of in, less privileged communities, they're not getting 10 or 12 weeks. They're going back at 2, 3, and 4 weeks to put food on the table for their other child or for themselves. And so it's just really their whole existence kind of ripped
Mhm.
open, thrown in a blender, and then you're supposed to be caring for this lovely little, like, bundle of joy, which they are. But I haven't written the blog article yet, but I will. I often talk to my patients about the fact that newborns suck. Like, I love them. Love them. They are the best, worst, most wonderful, horrible thing you ever do.
Oh my God.
They look at me and they go, but I thought it'd be perfect. And I'm like, yeah. Let me bust this bubble before the baby gets here. You're going to love them. And they're cute. Thank God, because you'd throw them out a window otherwise. I know I would have. I looked at my husband at 3 a.m. I'm an educated pediatrician with lots of baby
Oh my
experience.
gosh.
I know what's normal. I know what to do. And I looked at my husband a few weeks postpartum and at 3 a.m. and I said, you take this baby. And he goes, what? I got to go to the bathroom. And I was like, no, now. What? I will throw him out this window. And he goes, you wouldn't. And I said, try me. Take him with you to the bathroom. And like, I mean, I wasn't actually going to harm my baby, but I know that moment of desperation. It can be a beautiful, joyous time. It really is. But it is going to be hard and one of the most challenging experiences in many ways of your life, physically and emotionally, even if everything goes perfectly. And a lot of times it doesn't. So there's a lot to normalize there. It's a long list, and that's just scratching the surface because this is the biggest transformation you'll go through. And you don't go back. All of this, oh, are you back to your old? No, I'm not back to my old anything. I'm 10 years postpartum almost, and I'm postpartum forever. I
10
truly,
years postpartum.
and it feels like yesterday sometimes. My body is still, it's a mother now. My mind is a mother now. It does
Mm,
not go
mm.
back. And it just moves forward.
Now
Um,
that being said, doctor,
yeah,
someone who's watching who's like, oh my God, now I'm scared.
I know. That's
But
the
I'm
hard
already
part.
pregnant. That baby's coming soon. I'm here. I'm in it. Or for someone who's already
Right.
in it, it's like I'm here. I'm in it. Are there tips
Yes,
for navigating this system? And we could talk
absolutely.
about like maybe before baby's coming, our
Mhm,
baby's due. Like what are things to
absolutely.
empower a mom like through the season so it's
Absolutely.
more manageable? Because the baby, I use the example of a baby being a leech, but a beautiful one. Sorry, they
Oh,
suck
yeah,
you.
you love them.
They're
I would
suck you
never
dry, but
do
you
that.
love them. But it's a very demanding time,
Yeah,
and they didn't ask for your permission to drain you, but it's
yep,
a necessary phase. So how
yep.
would you empower women, and how would you say how do you prepare for this season?
I think that first starting to societally acknowledge all of these things we just listed, not to scare people, but just to know that it's normal and it's real and you're not alone. There is power in that. You are not alone. Then I find that if we do a little preparation during the pregnancy, we do a lot of preparation for the baby, right? We prepare for the
Mm,
birth, we prepare for how to take care of them, we have a baby shower, all of these things. But coming up with a postpartum care plan and sort of knowing how to navigate it, yes, can be so helpful. And I do that, personalize that with patients that I work with prenatally. But you can do it, on your own if you have to. There are more resources around like me coming, luckily. But there are some basic areas that preparing can help. So, one of them I find is knowing what physically could happen and having some of those care items around ahead of time. So, um, you don't have to buy the fancy kits that they're selling now, but you can. But you want to have, the right pads and the right, like I have the cloth sort of reusable chucks pads, like the ones they have in the
mm,
hospital. And I
mm,
have some of those at home to this day. And those just stayed on the bed because it was so much easier than dealing with everything else.
mm,
If
mm.
you have more than one bathroom in your home, a lot of times retreating to like your safe cave that no one else like visits, where you've got the ability to have your little laundry basket and all of your needed items. All of those things can help. And there's a lot of information out there about that. Um, the second kind of thing that I really focus a lot on with patients is preparing for nutrition. And a lot of people tout a lot of supplements. That's great and all, but really the food, of course, is the real medicine if we can make it happen. And you won't have time to prepare once baby's here. So start asking ahead of time. It's very hard to do, but hey, would you be willing to commit to bringing me food at this date? Or would you be willing to organize a meal train? Whatever you have best in your life. Um, You can make some food, prep some meals ahead of time if you want to, or have people kind of knowing what their roles are and what to do once baby comes. And 3 weeks later, once everyone disappears and the baby is still here, those kind of things. And there are some great books. The First 40 Days is one of my favorites, and it has a lot of recipes, but my favorite is it's called the Mother's Bowl. And basically, it's just very simple list of ingredients of each category that you can just make a handful of them on a Saturday, real quick, and then scoop from them all week, and you get these nutritious meals. So anything like that that makes it easy, or a meal
The first,
service, go
the
for it.
first 40 days, that's a book.
First 40 days, yep. It's and I can get you the link. I'll have to find it. I can get you the link if you want to post it later. I don't have the book on me right now. Love that book. There are some other postpartum guides out there now that also go through these principles, which is helpful. And honestly, one of the biggest ones I find is ask for help. And if you're not good at that, start practicing now. There's more people usually in your life than you think that want to jump in and may not know how. So make a list, brainstorm, make a list of ways people can help you besides showing up and holding your baby and cooing over them. They can come over and maybe it's dishes, maybe it's run a load of laundry, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, any of those chores, put them down. Grocery shopping, whatever may be on that list, make a list, stick it on your refrigerator, things we need done, how to help me today. Give it to family and friends ahead of time. Hand it out at your baby shower, whatever works. But we have to normalize asking for help because in the moment, you're so tired, you won't even think of what you need, much less it's hard to verbalize asking for help in our culture, I find. And it's also hard to accept it. So if you're on the other end and you're a family member trying to help this family, you know, make a list or grab the list if there is one. And when the mom is like, "Oh, no, no, you don't have to do the dishes, just do them anyways." They're like, "I
Mhm.
got you, babe. I got you." We have to be more assertive in helping and in accepting the help. So those are sort of there's a lot more that I do with parents. It's a 2-hour visit that we go through with all of the questions and concerns, but those are some of the basics. All too often, we plan for the shower and the baby, and we don't plan for the postpartum care. And I think of it a lot like you've probably heard people talk about planning for the wedding, but not their marriage. It's the
Mm,
same. We've got to plan for the relationship after, the transformation, not just the big event. Yeah. It's very
that
manageable. It's still hard, but it is manageable with support.
build a team. We're going to delve a little bit on the asking for help. One of the things I have found as a resistance, and even in my own journey too, I'll be honest with you, like, oh no, it's just part of the, prove you're a good mom type
Right.
title
Supermom.
reward or something
Yep,
if you
that's really
don't ask for help. So how have you empowered people to change their mindset and asking for help? Because they're like, it,
it's
it,
hard.
it's hard to, I guess, let go, and sometimes the culture says you're supposed to be able to do this and do this, having just pushed your human being out of your hoo-ha. So how do you encourage women, because this is very, very important. It's only recently I find to really understand, like, really asking for help and taking the help is
Right.
key to increasing your capacity and influence,
Yes.
and managing all the roles you play as a woman. So help me help our viewers who are like, yeah, 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 I'm sure, yes, ask for help, receive help. Like, how do you encourage them to wrap their mind around this whole idea?
It is one of the hardest parts, and I won't lie, one I still am working on in myself, so we are all in this together. I find that part of it is having open and honest conversations with your friends and family about how hard it is. You know, we don't need to hear your scary birth story when we're 36 weeks pregnant and about to pop, like, it's happening, leave it alone. But what we might wanna hear is what was hard for you postpartum and what help did you need? What help did you receive? What do you wish people had done? That right there will open up the conversation to, oh my gosh, that's really scary. I'm glad that you've been through that before. Can you help me through this too? You can kind of use that's an easier way, I think, but the more you talk about it, the more we normalize it, the easier it is to accept. And if you haven't had your baby yet, it sounds a little silly, but I actually give my patients exercises to say, start asking for help now. Practice it. Get through that discomfort, because it's one of those things that the more you do it, the easier it is. Much like a lot of what we do in medicine, right? We sort of just like pushed through until it got easy after all. So do something small. Ask for help ahead of time, even if it's asking for help, maybe, hey, I'm trying to get, XYZ in shape before baby comes. Would you be willing to come to the store with me
Mm.
that day? Or would you be willing to give me your advice? Would you be willing to um, sign up ahead of time when it's not right in front of you is easier. So
Mm.
make that list. If make that list and send it to your friends so it's not all one-on-one, and say,
Yeah.
"Hey, who can take responsibility for this that week for me? Thank
Mm.
you." Doing that, I find, makes a difference. The other thing I find is reframing. It's more of a mental shift. Reframing this idea that, I am my feelings. So I am overwhelmed. I am da 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 drowning. No, 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 no. That makes it very personal, and it becomes like I'm better than that and I can't admit weakness. No. The two things I recommend to people are, one, we need to start reframing asking for help as not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of strength. And you really have to keep telling yourself that. It takes strength to be vulnerable and
Mm.
accept the possibility of help, because you're asking for a possible rejection, right? So, or a possible judgment. So you have to really realize it's a strength and start telling yourself that. The other thing is, I am not my feeling. I am not sad. I am not disappointed. I am not overwhelmed. I am having an overwhelmed feeling. And so start for a couple of weeks. Every time you find yourself saying, I am sad, I am happy, catch yourself, and inside or out loud, I don't care. Every single time you say, I am this, say it again in your head. I am having a blank feeling, until it becomes second nature. And that's not a direct practice in asking for help, but it is where it starts, because it is a mind shift that we have to get through. So crowdsource with your friends, ask them what it was like postpartum. Usually we just ask about the birth. Ask what it was like, what they needed, what
Mm.
they wished
Mm.
someone had done.
A good one.
And then it might open up a conversation where they say, how can I help you? And that's an easy place to start with someone close enough to you. So it's not easy, but that's where I start.
I love it. What do you wish people had done to make your postpartum period easier and start from there? This has been powerful, powerful,
Good.
powerful, powerful. And Doc, so I have people who are watching who are like, wow, I really enjoy speaking or listening to you. I've learned a lot, actionable steps that I can use to implement during their pregnancy or share it with their friends. And they're like, how can I connect with you? Doc, where can people find you?
Absolutely. So a couple of places and I have kind of more content coming out. So on Facebook, currently it is INDY postpartum doc. That will change soon to Lindsay Moore MD. We're just working on the Facebook security, like letting me through changing. Sometimes it's weird. On Instagram, it is Lindsay Moore underscore MD. And my website, also to make it nice and easy, it matches the name of my practice, which is lindsaymooremd.com. So try to make it as easy as I can. And there is a contact me form on the website. Or if you'd rather not go through the website, lindsaymooremd@gmail.com. So as easy as I can make it. Um, and if you're anywhere in the state of Indiana, I do work with people virtually as well as in office and sometimes in home on both postpartum and breastfeeding. And a lot of times prenatally, even to plan ahead, either because they're nervous or recognize how hard it is, or they're like, it went really bad last time and they're terrified. And I love seeing those families supported the second time, because it all changes.
Yeah.
Even if it's still hard, it changes. If they're outside of Indiana, I'm going to soon be launching some video courses online that should have some live question and answer sessions. So I can't be your doctor if you're out of Indiana currently, but some sort of coaching and classes coming soon. And for breastfeeding on my website too, there is already a free 30-minute top tips for breastfeeding video, that some of the things that I really wish you'd actually get taught instead of a lot of the things that often get taught. And I'm so tired of parents saying, why didn't someone tell me? And I'm like, I don't know, but I'm gonna like, get in touch.
Awesome.
And if you need a doctor in your state, I do have a network of a lot of other fourth trimester and postpartum and breastfeeding docs.
Awesome.
Reach
Awesome.
out. I'll help
Awesome.
guide you to a website. Let me know.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And for those of you who are watching, you have it. There you have it. Please share a lot of resources here. You follow her. That way you can get updates as she's transitioning into her new practice. Lots of tips here, Doc. I'm really impressed with what you do, and I'm thankful for what you do. I was going to share this real quick. I remember having a patient who, because of how traumatic her postpartum period was, had given up on her desire to have more children. She had the one and done. And it took her almost 3 years to actually make an appointment, come see me. Is the first time after having that. So these conversations are important because they affect the next generation too. You don't have to do pregnancy, postpartum alone. And there are ways that you can build a community to help you thrive even through that season. So thank you so much, Doc, for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure, my pleasure. And thank you all for watching. As always, please share with those who could find this useful. You can simply forward this to them. You could comment in the link if you're on YouTube or on Facebook. And as always, if you or anyone you know is looking for an awesome, a thorough, and a passionate family physician in the Mansfield or surrounding Texas area, I am she. Have a good one, everyone. Thank you so much, Doc.